Before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And if you're watching this late at night, let me know where you're from and what time it is where you are. That way, YouTube knows you want more stories just like this, delivered straight into the dark. Now, let's begin. Emma was 16 when her parents left her home alone for the weekend. They were heading out of town for her cousin's wedding and trusted Emma to handle herself. Their house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, flanked by forest on one side and a long abandoned construction site on the other. It was the kind of neighborhood where nothing ever happened, until it did. That Friday evening, the house felt unusually quiet. Emma microwaved leftover pasta, set up a movie on the living room TV, and curled up under a blanket. By midnight, she was half asleep on the couch when she heard a soft metallic clunk coming from the hallway. She sat up confused. It wasn't loud, just odd, like something metal scraping against metal. She paused the movie and listened. Nothing. She stood and moved slowly down the hallway, checking each room. Everything seemed in place. She chalked it up to the old ventilation system creaking. The house was nearly 20 years old, and noises weren't new. But just as she turned back toward the living room, she heard it again. This time, a sharper ping, as if something had shifted within one of the vents. Feeling a little on edge, Emma went to bed early. She locked her bedroom door, something she never did, and left her phone charging on the nightstand, screen facing up. Around 2:13 a.m., the phone lit up. A message from an unknown number. "I see you're awake." Emma sat upright in bed, heart pounding. She checked the message again, thinking maybe it was a prank. But then, a second message arrived. "Why'd you stop watching your movie?" Her breathing quickened. She stared at the bedroom door, locked, but suddenly feeling paper thin. She dialed her mom, then dad. No answer. It was too late. She didn't want to call 911 just yet. What would she even say? Trying to calm herself, she got up and checked the windows. All locked. She tiptoed to the hallway. Still quiet. No movement. Just as she was about to go back to bed, she heard a whisper, faint but unmistakable. "Emma!" It came from the vent, the floor-level heating vent near the bathroom door. She froze. The voice didn't sound supernatural. It sounded human, male, deep, calm. She backed away slowly and rushed back into her bedroom, locking the door again. She called 911 this time, her voice shaking as she whispered into the receiver. The dispatcher kept her calm. Officers were dispatched, but Emma couldn't stop staring at the vent on her bedroom floor. She moved a dresser in front of it and sat in the far corner of the room, clutching a lamp like a weapon. When the police arrived, they searched the house. Nothing was stolen, no broken windows, no sign of forced entry. But in the crawl space under the house, they found something chilling. A small torn blanket, food wrappers, a flashlight, and a scratched-up phone, with no SIM card but multiple sent messages in the draft folder. The crawl space opened directly into the duct system. Whoever had been living down there had been watching Emma, listening, crawling through the vents. The messages, the voice, they weren't hallucinations. And worst of all, the police never caught him. Tyler had just turned 12 when he was allowed to stay home alone for the first time. It was supposed to be a milestone, a small taste of independence while his parents went out for dinner with friends. The plan was simple: microwave pizza, one movie, and a lights out by 10. The house was modest: 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, kitchen connected to a small laundry room and pantry. They lived in a quiet suburb just outside Portland, where neighbors knew each other by name and the sound of sirens was rare. Tyler was used to feeling safe. By 8:45, he had finished his pizza and settled in with an old superhero movie. As he stretched out on the couch, The house creaked the way it always did, pipes shifting, floorboards settling, wind brushing past the windows. It was normal, until he heard something new. A faint tapping, rapid, deliberate, coming from the kitchen. He muted the TV and sat up. The house fell silent again. He waited. Nothing. He got up, grabbed a flashlight from the side drawer just in case, and tiptoed to the kitchen. Everything looked normal. No windows open, no pets, nothing out of place. Just as he turned back toward the living room, the sound came again. Tap, tap, tap. But this time, from the pantry. Tyler froze. The pantry door was closed, but something felt off. It was always slightly ajar. His mom hated closed spaces, but now it was shut, and he was certain he hadn't touched it. He moved closer, listening. For a few seconds, there was nothing. Then, Tyler, his name whispered, from behind the pantry door. He ran. He bolted down the hallway into his room, locked the door, and grabbed his phone. He wanted to call his mom, but something stopped him. It felt like, if he acknowledged it, said it out loud, it would make it real. Instead, he texted, "Is someone supposed to be home?" No response. Then another sound. Creak. From the hallway. His bedroom door handle jiggled. Not forcefully, but like someone was trying it, gently. He backed up toward his closet, heart thudding, and climbed inside. It was dark and cramped, but quiet. From inside, he heard nothing. For several minutes. Until a knock. Not on the door. On the closet door. "You left the door unlocked, Tyler." He screamed. Not a normal scream. A primal, panicked, terrified shriek. He threw open the closet and ran straight into the hallway. The front door was wide open, and standing at the far end of the hallway near the kitchen was the pantry door, still closed. He bolted out the house barefoot and ran to the neighbors. They called his parents, then the police. What the officers found later shook them. The pantry had scratches on the inside of the door, deep, erratic, like fingernails clawing from within. And beneath the shelves behind some canned goods was a small, jagged hole leading into the wall, a crawl space. It ran behind the kitchen and bathroom and ended behind Tyler's bedroom closet. Inside it, they found food wrappers, a used blanket, and an old elementary school ID card. It wasn't Tyler's. The photo was of a boy who'd gone missing 6 years earlier, in the same neighborhood. When Ava was 19, she moved into her first apartment, a small ground-floor studio near her college campus. It wasn't fancy, but it was hers. The rent was cheap, and it had a big window facing the street, which let in a lot of light during the day. At night, though, that window became a problem. It started with small things, a flicker of movement outside when she wasn't expecting anyone, a shadow that didn't line up with a tree. She brushed it off at first. It was a busy neighborhood, and the street outside was often filled with passing students, night joggers, and neighbors walking their dogs. But one night around 11:30 p.m., Ava was sitting at her desk writing a paper when she felt watched. Not the kind of fleeting awareness that passes, but a persistent, crawling discomfort. She turned toward the window and saw nothing. Still, the feeling didn't go away. She walked over to the window and gently pulled the curtain aside. Nothing but the empty street. But just as she was about to let the curtain drop, she noticed something. A wet footprint on the inside of the glass. One single bare footprint. It was smudged and hazy, as if someone had pressed their foot against the window and then wiped it slowly downward. Ava jumped back and turned on every light in the apartment. She checked the locks, windows, doors, even the closet. Everything was shut and secure. She barely slept that night, convinced it had to be some weird moisture trick. Condensation, maybe. But the next night it happened again. Same time, same feeling. This time she didn't look out right away. She sat frozen, staring at the curtain from across the room. heart thudding. Then a knock. 2 taps, slow, deliberate. Ava grabbed her phone and called her best friend who lived in the next building over. She was too scared to go outside, but too panicked to stay still. Her friend rushed over and banged on the front door. But by the time Ava opened it, whoever had been outside was long gone. The police came and checked the area. They found faint footprints leading from the alley behind her building toward the street, but they stopped near a storm drain. No fingerprints, no damage, no way to identify anything. She installed a camera outside the window the next day. That night, she left the lights on and pretended to sleep on the couch, her phone recording the camera feed. At exactly 11:33 p.m., she heard the tap again, then another. Her screen lit up. What she saw chilled her to the core. There was a man, his face inches from the window, but he wasn't looking in. He was smiling at the camera, as if he knew exactly where it was. She froze. The man never moved. He stood still for nearly 4 minutes, smiling, breathing, not touching the glass, not tapping anymore. Then slowly, he raised his hand and pointed directly at the lens and walked away. Ava moved out the next morning. She gave the footage to the police, but they couldn't identify him. No criminal record, no matches. But here's the part that never left her. The camera had night vision. It only recorded in black and white. And when the police enhanced the footage, they noticed something even more disturbing. The man had no reflection in the glass. The lights from the apartment reflected everything. The curtains, Ava's lamp, even her ceiling fan. But not him, just a face, smiling in the dark. It was a brutally cold December night when Marcus found himself home alone in his family's old farmhouse, located on the outskirts of a sleepy rural town in Pennsylvania. The kind of place where the snow stays thick and the silence becomes deafening. His parents had gone to visit his grandmother overnight, leaving Marcus in charge of their 2 dogs, an old border collie and a pug who mostly slept under the kitchen table. At 17, Marcus didn't mind being alone. He actually liked it. The peace, the quiet, the chance to binge horror movies and microwave burritos without anyone complaining. That night, after feeding the dogs and making himself dinner, Marcus settled into the living room. Snow was piling up outside, and the wind howled like a restless ghost. He lit the fireplace and pulled a blanket over himself. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, 10:43 p.m. And then the dogs barked. Not their usual someone's at the door bark. It was sharp, alarmed, low. They stood near the kitchen, growling, ears up, eyes locked on the hallway. Marcus muted the TV and listened. Silence. Then came a sound, subtle at first. Not footsteps, not knocking. Breathing, deep labored breathing. But it wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from inside the wall. Marcus stood up slowly. The dogs whimpered and backed away as he moved toward the far side of the living room, where the old wooden wall panels met the staircase. The breathing was faint, but unmistakable. Someone was behind the wall. Slow, raspy exhales. Inhale, exhale. Almost like someone sleeping. He tapped the wall. The breathing stopped. Marcus stared at the wood, heart pounding in his ears. For a long minute, there was only silence. Then came the knock. From inside the wall. 3 sharp raps, right where he had tapped moments before. Marcus stumbled back and grabbed his phone. He called his dad. No answer. Then his mom. Voicemail. The police felt like too much. What would he even say? That his wall was breathing? He grabbed a flashlight and checked the basement. It was cramped, filled with old furniture, boxes, and a furnace that had seen better days. But along the far wall, just behind where the sound had come from, he noticed something odd, an old nailed-shut hatch. He hadn't seen it before. It was partially hidden behind a pile of empty picture frames. The hatch was about 3 feet wide, with rusted hinges and splintered wood. The nails were old, but one of them was bent. Fresh. Marcus didn't open it. Instead, he returned upstairs and pushed the heaviest chair he could find against the wall. He didn't sleep that night. The next morning, his parents returned, and he told them everything. His dad chuckled nervously and said, "This house is weird like that, settling noises." But his mother went pale when he mentioned the hatch. She told him that the house had once belonged to a recluse, a man who disappeared decades ago. People thought he had wandered into the woods during a blizzard and never returned. But Marcus's mother remembered something more unsettling. That man had built secret compartments all over the house. Paranoia, the neighbors said. That hatch in the basement, it wasn't supposed to be there. That night they opened it together. Inside was a narrow space, barely enough for a person to crawl into. The air was stale and cold. In the corner, wrapped in a tattered quilt, was an old voice recorder, still running. The battery was nearly dead, but when they played it back, they heard it. Breathing, and then a voice, barely a whisper. "Don't let him out." Isabella lived in a quiet neighborhood nestled near the edge of a vast stretch of forest. The kind of place where you could hear owls at night and the occasional rustling of deer through the underbrush. She was 17, responsible, and trusted by her parents enough to stay home alone for a weekend while they attended a wedding in another state. The house was modest but cozy, a single story with a sloped roof, a backyard that led into the woods, and an old chimney that hadn't been used in years. Isabella had grown up there. She knew every creak of the floorboards, every groan of the pipes. So when the strange noises began, she immediately noticed. It was just past midnight. She had turned off the TV and was brushing her teeth when she heard it. A slow, dragging scrape from above. Not in the attic. On the roof. She paused, toothbrush still in hand, heart ticking up a notch. The sound stopped. Then it came again, a heavier thump followed by a dragging noise like someone or something crawling. She tiptoed to her bedroom and turned off the lights. Through the window, she could see the sky, moonlit, clear, and a shadow moving. Something was definitely on the roof. She grabbed her phone and quietly opened the weather app. It wasn't supposed to rain. No animals known to her made that kind of noise. And then the sound moved toward the back of the house, above her bedroom. She stared up, trying to calculate if it could be squirrels, raccoons, but it felt bigger, heavier, intentional. Then came the scratching. A slow scrape along the ceiling, right above where she was standing, and then tapping, like fingers. Her heart pounded as she backed away. She decided to call her dad. No answer. Her mom, voicemail. As she debated dialing 911, her phone vibrated. A message, unknown number. Tell it to stop looking. She froze. Her first instinct was that it was a prank, but who would even know she was home alone? Only a few close friends, and none of them would do something like this. She replied, "Who is this?" No answer. She sent another. "This isn't funny." Still nothing. Then another sound, this time not from the roof but from the chimney. A soft rhythmic knocking like knuckles on old brick. Isabella turned toward the fireplace, the one in the living room that hadn't been used in over 10 years. The sound got louder. Knock, knock, knock. She stepped closer, phone trembling in her hand. Then from inside the chimney, a voice, whispering, indistinct. She held her phone toward it and turned on the recorder. That's when a second message came through. "You're listening." She ran out the front door into the cold, barefoot. She banged on her neighbor's door until they opened, startled. She explained everything, and they let her stay with them until morning. The police were called. They searched the roof. Nothing. No footprints. no damage. But when they inspected the chimney, they found something strange. On the inside of the flue, about 6 feet up, were scratches, deep, gouged markings, as if someone had clawed their way down or tried to claw their way up. And on the soot-covered wall just beneath the hatch, someone had written in charcoal, "I'm still looking." If you made it this far, thank you for spending your night with us. If these stories gave you chills, there's plenty more waiting. Don't forget to subscribe to NightFear Stories for new terrifying tales every single night. Sleep well, if you can.